how can we better improve the work environment, productivity, the revenue, the business around us. And I felt that team motivation was key and critical to continuously thinking how to keep the employees happy. That was one of the main goals for me, was making sure everyone was happy. Now, you can't make everyone happy, but if you're thinking about the happiness and the morale of the people, it's very important to that productivity and within the operations. So these are some of the things I had to say. I don't know how my time is, but I think that this is a wonderful place to be, and I'll say in business, coming from the Bronx has been a big advantage to me, because I will turn on my Bronx a little in negotiations, and I believe that when you come from I always say, I came from the streets culture, and where I grew up on White Plains Road, it was a pretty tough neighborhood, and when I remember back to those experiences, it's hard to believe that those experiences happened where I am today, and some of the folks that I'm around in business. But it definitely helped me, in being self-sufficient, innovative, and trying to think a little bit. Yes. Oh, sure.
Okay, so how you doing, George Torres, Sofrito Media Group. Being an innovator in that space and coming into something that not many people have done. How do you value the company, or how do you have that conversation with Google about acquisition? Not really understanding what potentially the company could be worth in the future.
Yeah, and it's a definitely art and science approach. My partner was a finance major, and we always had a running schedule of when we wanted to get out financially. And first, it was $5 million for me personally, $10 million, $20 million. We had these price points. So we were always thinking, again, we were good at math, and so, like anything, you want to, be able to sell your company or drive your business. You don't always want to sell your company. A lot of people don't sell their companies, but creating a value, we had to be realistic. Now, we were pretty brazen on our approach and how we valued the company, but one thing that I believe we did smartly was I hired people smarter than I hired an investment banker. Some people believe in investment bankers, some people don't. But they helped me with the packaging to create a value proposition that could speak the language of Google investors. And when we did the M&A, I don't know, it was like 70 plus people on the M&A, meaning all around trying to do the deal. So 70 people on one side, it was our team of 30 M&A people, and their team was 40-something M&A. So everyone had to agree to the value. So there was a lot of thought that went into it, but it's art and science. I think one of the big challenges that I see in startups are they have this Instagram, I'm going to become a $780 million acquisition, Mark Zuckerberg dreams. We were a really healthy acquisition. Again, we had 70% of the company. I owned a large majority of that. So for me, some people end up with $1 billion valuation exit and they get 3% of that. Well, I didn't want to be that, but it was realistic that those things can happen. And I think the one thing you have to do is be cognizant of where you feel your value is, but realistically, but it's not Instagram always. It could be something a little bit more modest, but real to where you are. And I felt when I got to this point, that's when the greed kicked. I overcame my greed because we got a bidding war and all these types of things that you'd love to have. And I said, it's enough, and it's Google, and I'm going to I'll never work again in my life. So that was my buyout kind of position. Now, I wish I could say I never work again because I actually enjoy going to work and it's fun. I'm still, I feel a little young, but that was my point, and my family. But I would say just try to be realistic. I have friends that have, started companies and they got removed from the board and the company's worth $1 billion now, and they're just like they got nothing other than a little piece of equity. So you got to be realistic, and I think valuation is art and science, but only you can know as well a willing buyer or willing seller kind of philosophy.
Patrick is on the panel, so more questions later. We'll continue with the speakers.
Thank you.
So, Patrick, thank you very much. That very real-world experience, I think that really resonates with a lot of people hearing those lessons about both how a small company can join the community and what you're able to do with those technologies, but also those very practical lessons about how to build the company and operate it. So I'm sure you get more questions during the panel, so thank you very much for that. Now I'd like to welcome Elias Mendoza, who's the Managing Director of Investment Development and Strategy at Cirrus Capital.
Thank you very much for having me this morning. I told RP not to put me behind all the cool people that were going to speak, so unfortunately he did. And now you get me. So with a very linear presentation and a very somewhat of a square approach. So my name is Elias Mendoza. I am Managing Director for BizDev at Cirrus Capital, which means I find companies for our fund to invest in. We are primarily focused on technology and telecom. And I come from a background of technology, so you're going to have to be patient with me because when we were picking the topic about transformation, everything to a technologist looks like technology can solve it. So there's a couple of things that I'll say up front. One is it's a very technology-focused view of the world and maybe what we could do in thinking about opportunities for transformation. And two is my presentation slides, I've never been accused of being exciting, so they're very linear, they're very text-oriented, so bear with me. I have a little bit of background, and I know there was a question that was being asked about M&A. So I grew up in Texas, so I'm not from the Bronx. I came up to school in the East Coast, and I went to work in the late 80s, for those of you who can still remember that, or that are old enough to remember that, for Morgan Stanley. And I was very fortunate to be sent overseas at a relatively young age. So I spent a lot of time in Japan. I spent time in China, speaking to some of the students here about that. I spent time in Europe doing a lot of technology and telecom advisory for companies. I spent a few years in between that and what I do today at IBM, where I was the person responsible for finding, buying, and then integrating IBM's acquisitions. So over the period of time that I was there, we were responsible for everything that had to do with Smarter Planet, right? So whenever you see those commercials and the marketing around, I'm here to make a smarter planet, we had to go and figure out what it was that was going to take IBM to be a Smarter Planet provider. And so a lot of experiences with technologies from that perspective. So today, in terms of digital transformation and the Bronx, what I thought I would start with is talk a little bit about why I think technology makes a difference in the transformation. And it's very simple from my perspective. I've always found technology and the technology industry to be very egalitarian, right? So it's not necessarily about where you're doing things, it's how good you are at doing something that really, at the end of the day, is a differentiator for a product and a service. So let me get into see, I told you it was very text heavy. Technology providing us some pretty tremendous opportunities. So all the new developments that are out there that we see today and that are affecting us, we see through the consumption of content, we see through our devices and how we communicate, but more and more we're actually seeing technology and telecommunications technology and infrastructure change the way that we work, the way that we drive, the way that we heat our houses, and the way that we're served by government and by businesses, right? So it's actually a very exciting time for us to be thinking about the kinds of things that can happen around technology. And so as you think about, or as we think together about transformation and how it applies to the Bronx and this community, I'd say that we've got to embrace technology in order for us to be able to do that. So with that, I go to these points more succinctly than I have on the slide. But essentially, I wanted to focus on four things as a primary message. First is that as we think about, again, building business and building a commercial opportunity here, you can deliver in today's world a product or a service from anywhere, right? You don't have to be right next to your customer to make a difference for that customer, right? So technology really does allow you to incorporate all sorts of different permutations into a business model and into delivery models that will enable you to reach far farther away from where you are to actually service something, as long as you have something valuable to add. So communications and technologies and technical infrastructure applications have devolved in such a way that you can now really do best of breed service and best of breed products while you're away. So it's not where you are that matters, it's how good at what you do that matters. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the cloud as a concept for, again, business enablement and transformation, not just here, but everywhere. And you actually get to see some graphics behind those pages. Second point to make is, while you can be anywhere and service anybody, as long as you're good, it's only a tried and true proposition if you find capital being invested in those opportunities, in those endeavors, and you see companies like IBM, companies like Google, and others that are actively looking for developments in those areas and acquiring them and bringing them in and incorporating them in what they traditionally have done and in what they've aspired to do. So we're going to go through a couple of slides, again, just to show you the order of magnitude of investments and acquisitions that are taking place in some of these sectors or some of these segments in the technology space that you'll recognize as being impactful on your daily lives, that are very telling of two things. One is there's money for good ideas, and two, which is relevant to investors, but two is that on the other side of it, there's money from companies and there's money from big buyers in recognition of the development and the capabilities it takes to put something like that together. We're not going to talk about IPOs, and we're not going to talk about that as an exit opportunity. While they're big headline grabbers, there's still a very, very tiny amount of business model outcomes in today's economy. So, but it's very real, right? The opportunity to grow a business, invest in it, or find investment in a good idea, and then reach the outcomes that obviously somebody else in this room has reached with a company like Google. Thirdly is that there's lots of stuff going on right near us. So you kind of say, well, look, you can actually service anybody from anywhere. There's money to go around to put to work against new ideas. We should be able to organize all of that and put business models together that can address that. And what's the benefit of something to the Bronx that it can bring as a distinct competitive advantage? Well, the fact is that there's still a lot of stuff, right, that happens right near us. Right? So adopters of technologies like advertising and media and financial services, which have traditionally and continue to be big users of complicated infrastructure, complicated applications, are right down the street, both literally and figuratively, right? So does, in fact, then the Bronx have an opportunity to have an intellectual and a vocational competitive advantage over others that are trying to build services that might be targeting the guys that are down the block from us? Maybe. And then finally, the lesson that everything, including transformation, is evolutionary. So as I kind of prepared a little bit for giving this talk and have in the past prepared for meetings with RP, I've taken a lot of notes around the concept and the vision of transformation, right? And so, the one thing is that transformation does happen, and it is implied that it's evolutionary, right? So there are steps towards getting facile and getting comfortable with technology, to be using it in a way that's not just productive individually, but productive across the community. And that ultimately you gain the level of comfort to be able to apply it to build a business and to yourselves affect communities and customers, not just here, but around the world. So those are the four propositions, so to speak, around digital transformation in the Bronx. I'm going to now show you my big cloud slide. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, other than I really searched for anywhere that I put a graphic in a presentation, and this is what I came up with. So I apologize. I don't even think it necessarily applies, but going back, I'll make it apply. But going back originally to servicing anybody from anywhere, there's a lot of literature. There's a lot of conversations about the fact that that the cloud, right, can be used as a delivery platform for goods and services that are in a sense, they're services, very services oriented, but in a lot of ways the cloud is replacing physical infrastructure or IT. So that gives you a sense for the power of this kind of architecture. You can actually apply it to people and operations, right? And so anything that is removed from a physical location and whose task can be put somewhere else and delivered through some certain characteristics that some really smart guys determine will be the definition of the cloud, is deemed to be deliverable or cloud technology, right? But it's alive, it's very real, and you'll see in a couple of slides how much money is being put to work behind some of these technologies, architectures, and infrastructures. But I didn't want to let this presentation go without having a cloud graphic. So I talked a little bit about, then the second point that I was making is about new business formation. So important, obviously, in new business formation to find capital, right? So as you think about it from a technical or a technology and infrastructure perspective, you really try to look for opportunities that are disruptive, right? So what are the kinds of things that are going to provide companies new opportunities for growth, as well as keeping an eye on for companies that already do okay in the legacy environment or the current environment that are going to have to pick up the pace with respect to innovation and new business development. So this is just a quick slide and a snapshot of a few companies in the last 6 months or so that have had let's say greater than $20 or $25 million rounds that are raised, and the transformation themes around those. And you'll see pretty consistently that it is around new technologies like hardware technology and how rapidly computers are going from computers that fill a room to servers that don't fill rooms and that are about this big, to iPads to iPhones that can be used not just to communicate but to work, all the way down through analytics. And there's some folks here that actually study analytics under RP. That is a very relevant application of the data that's available about us or about behavioral patterns, not just for human beings, but for physical assets. And that can be used to put to work to improve the quality of service or the quality of performance around things. Technology as service, we talked about. That's again another way of describing the cloud. Social media, vertical commerce, where you don't have to walk into a building anymore to buy a good or buy a service. You log on. You don't have to go to the travel agent anymore. You log on to kayak.com. You log on to Amazon. You log on to diapers.com, which is my favorite example before it was bought by Amazon, and you get what you need delivered to your home. So these are the kinds of opportunity, or these are the kinds of companies that are attracting investment. It's significant investment, right? But they're all part of something that's happening and part of something that's transformational. And the sums that are being put to work around these types of companies are significantly larger than they've been in the past. So then we go to the other side of the equation, where we talk about how real are these businesses. So everybody talks about the fact that there's some pretty massive explosions of small companies that they raise $30 million, they go out, they spend it wildly, and then they kind of blow up, and gone is the technology, gone are the companies themselves and the people that they were employing to try to develop a new business model. The reality is that a lot of these companies do manage to make inroads in their customer markets, and more so today, right? So we're finding that companies are better able to dissect a business process or a business model and address very specific elements of it, which is a really important fact, right? That allows companies to get built And ultimately, for bigger companies that are out there in the marketplace, like IBM, like Google, like Cisco, like Oracle, to go out and reach out to these companies, look at them for the value that they have brought or that they've developed, substituting a lot of the work that they would have had to have done, and then bringing them in and looking to integrate them and move their own big businesses in a new direction. So we talk a lot about, or I talk a lot about Smarter Planet and Smarter this and that from IBM as a really good example of a strategy that was developed by IBM to try to address business technology needs in a very different way. And the only way really to do it is not just through the R&D efforts that IBM spends a good deal of money on an annual basis. You need creativity and innovation happening outside of that. And so we were very, very, very prolific in acquiring companies. We bought about 16 to 17 companies per year, right? So in order for us to be able to do that, we looked at 200, right? So we say if you buy $4 billion worth of companies a year, you're looking at $50 billion of market cap, right? So that's a lot to look at. But there's a lot of companies, and it's not just IBM. The top 25 buyers in technology probably account for, if not 2/3 and 3/4 of the acquisition spend in any given year. So again, there's the cloud, there's money to be spent on new ideas, and there's money to be spent on the exit for investors and for management teams that are off and taking their businesses to the next level within a bigger company. So the next piece then is just some examples, right? So talking a little bit about analytics and talking a little bit about new areas that are affecting our lives. So I thought I'd just take a couple of slides and show you some of the thinking around physical internet and what we call people cloud or crowdsourcing, which I think, again, began to me to shape some of the opportunities that one might consider as being a distinct competitive advantage out of here. But physical internet is basically the concept that everything that's physical can be instrumented and the behavior adjusted according to the analytics, the performance analytics of the time. So think about Google Car. Think about the fact that you've got now the ability to remote sensor your house to turn on and off lights at certain points of the day. Your car is actually full of these kinds of examples of physical internet type of applications, all the way from dimming the lights to alarm and so on and so forth. So that was. That basically is the concept of being smarter around how we operate. And so just so you get a feel for how complicated it is to put that together. And again, complexity breeds opportunity, right? So the smarter the more you're able to pull apart what constitutes solutions and really get good at a certain element of it. In today's technology, application technology, communications technology, and infrastructure technology, you are able to build some pretty substantive business cases and business models around each. So you'll see just to automate a house or just to automate a car takes an entire stack of technology participants and technology companies to do that. That's physical internet. Another opportunity that we like to talk about and that also lends itself to gradual transformation is something like crowdsourcing or the people cloud. Right. So to the extent that you can tear apart work, right, into different segments and find experts that can do each one of those individual segments, it doesn't matter that they sit next to you or not, as we were talking about earlier. It's essentially how good you do that piece of work and how you can integrate it. So here's just examples of all these companies that are popping up that are able to address different business cases or use cases for operations as they apply to some big complicated businesses and big complicated industries. Just like the hardware cloud, it comes in 3 flavors: private, public, or hybrid. You'll see some names, some big names as well here that support each one of these types of initiatives. Everybody from IBM to Google to Microsoft, Facebook, and Netflix. And then finally, just catalyzing the main objectives of technology-led business development in the Bronx. So, I was listening to the previous conversation or presentation, and you can't help but take away the message around focus, right? And whatever you pick to do, you've got to do it well, but you've got to pick it in such a way that you assess what you have today, what's aspirational for you to be able to do, and then you really go very, very hard at it, right? And so that, is basically what we've got to do when we're looking for transformation. It's evolutionary, so it allows us to take a rate and pace that will help us bring technologies and technology adoption as we get more comfortable, really build businesses and build business models with those that are around us to gradually transform ourselves individually in the community. And this is how you take stock of what you've got, right? So you've got resources and infrastructure to offer, competitive advantage potentially. And so in the end, what is it that you might be able to provide? Well, could the Bronx be a people cloud, right? Is there stuff here that we can do, right, that nobody else can do better, or that we're going to be top 5 or top 10? Well, why not, right? We can be part of a next generation crowdsourced type platform because of the guys that we work with around and are around us every day, right? In a 30-mile radius, right? Could we be a hub for high-end analytics? Well, yeah. As companies get smarter about breaking up their own smarter business process and technology, there's a lot that can be done around analytics and analytics applications. And then, to the extent possible, would you want to be a smarter city, right? Can the Bronx be a template for being the smarter borough and incorporate smart technology into service delivery out of the government? So this is just kind of some high-level thinking around how I might think business models might be shaped. So let me stop there.
Thank you very much, Elias. That was great. I think some of the takeaways I have from that is the geographic independence, the ability to service multiple locations and factors. I loved your discussion on the economic models, the different entry points we could have there, and I think you've given us a lot of food for thought around some specific ideas about how the Bronx can play in those different categories. So very valuable, and I know we'll come back to those themes probably in the panel. Now I'd like to welcome Mario Kranjak, who's a partner of Kranjak, Tripodi and Partners, to address this as well. Mario.
Good morning. Thank you for having me here. The reason he did that is because I'm an attorney, so nobody thinks that we could actually work a technology podium, but I think I would have figured it out. I'm always happy to be here. I graduated from the College of Business before I went to Gabelli School in 1987. Took the CPA exam, passed it, but didn't practice. Went straight to law school in September of that year to Fordham Law. And I've been representing entrepreneurs and people who finance entrepreneurs since 1990. I first did it at a very large firm, learned a lot, and decided that I'm going to be representing these people for the rest of my life. I could do it on my own, and I created my team. So, in a sense, I was an entrepreneur as well, and happy to be here. We've built up a great team. My tax partner, who's been with me since 1990, is still with us. And I can't do anything without a tax partner, as I'm sure some of the entrepreneurs in this room will testify to, probably especially you. So it's been a great way to see innovation and not have to be a technologist, but I'm not. I've heard a lot of stories. I've seen a lot of successes and failures, and people who rebooted their businesses and became successful after trying for a while. So when RP asked me to come here, we were having lunch, and I guess he thought I had some excitement about entrepreneurism and technology. I said, yeah, I'd be happy to come here and talk to you and give you my perspective. There'd be nothing more boring for everyone in this room than to listen to an attorney speak about the 33 Act or the 34 Act, so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you about some of my experiences, and I welcome questions at the end. I'll try to get through my program, and then we can just talk about, have a dialogue. The common theme that we heard here this morning is about teams. People create teams. And from watching startups and technologists, what I realized is that there's really two types of people. There's transactional people and there's operators. And there's very few people who can actually do both very well. So that's why you need a team. And within that team, you'll have different types of disciplines, of course. The sciences, the business people, the accountants, the lawyers. I enjoy being part of the team. I've been doing this domestically. I've been doing it internationally. I was in Dubai last week with a Saudi client who was investing in technology that was being done in Dubai. That same client a year ago needed technology for one of their businesses in Japan. So we went to Japan and we bought a company with them. So being part of a team is really what gets me out of bed in the morning, besides my children and everybody else having to get on with their day. But I've enjoyed it tremendously. So the world of entrepreneurism is alive and well throughout the world, and there's really nothing that gets done that can't be done in the Bronx as well. We have here a great population with values. There's a lot of immigrants. Immigrants and their children have been proven that are one of the best sources of entrepreneurs in America and the most successful business owners as well. There's been a lot of studies done, and I can't cite them all, but I've read a few. So just to give you some background about the technologies and the companies that I've worked on, they range from software to e-commerce to lifestyle e-commerce, hyper-local social networking, and I ran into one of my clients here this morning, which is always great. I run into my clients everywhere. And about a year ago, I was doing the executive sleep at a Covenant House. So I was sleeping on the sidewalk at 43rd and 10th Avenue to raise money for homeless youth. And 3 of my clients showed up. And none of us knew we were going to be there. So it's just a great way to meet people, to be successful, and to enjoy what you do for a living. Because a lot of people get up every morning and don't enjoy what they do. If you're one of those people, change your life. Do something different. We work on mobility apps. They're very popular right now. There's a company that's really interesting, and it's called, it's an LED streetlight company. And the way it became an LED streetlight company was, it was an LED headlight company based in Europe, making headlights for cars, premium cars, Mercedes, BMWs, Porsches. In 2008, people stopped buying cars, and car makers stopped buying headlights. So my clients called me and said, well, what are we going to do? We're going to go out of business. No one's buying our headlights. They're great headlights, but the market's not there. So we were standing outside, and one guy said, look, these streetlights are terrible. I can't read anything. So they transferred their technology from headlights into streetlights. Now, what are the benefits of that to society? Well, they save 70% of the energy. It lasts for 15 years. A high-pressure sodium light bulb outside will only last about 2 or 3 years. And they require maintenance. What else? Well, they're actually kind to the environment. The heat comes off the dark side. The light side. Insects, flies, don't die on it. Now, you might not think that's a big deal, but well, if you're an insect or a fly, it's a big deal, but you don't have to go and clean them. There's very low maintenance. So they developed this technology out of really sheer desperation. They transferred it to something that is now doing very well. And of course, the auto industry came back as well. So now they have great business both ways. But I assisted in bringing them to the U.S. They're here, they're worldwide. There's another client who last week in Dubai was presenting a very interesting product. There's very little water available for lawns and golf courses and things, but they created a product that gets rolled underneath grass before you grow grass. So it's gravel, their product, which is like a carpet, and then there's soil and grass on top. What's the benefit of that product? Well, 1 square meter of it can hold 17 liters of water. So basically, you don't have to water the lawn or your hotel lawn or your golf course that often. So it holds whatever little water there is. So for me, watching entrepreneurs in action is great. I mean, people come up with these ideas. I can never come up with them. But I enjoy being part of their team, and they do need lawyers. Some people hire us from the very beginning. Some people wait till they need us, or they're selling their business. And wherever we come in, we try to add value. We'll basically what we do is if we're coming in from the beginning, we'll help you choose the form of entity. We'll do the corporate governance or the company governance if it's not a corporation. We'll do the agreements with the employees, the consultants, the equity upsides were mentioned earlier as well, trade secret agreements, investment agreements, and then the exit. So for us, it's always been great to participate on both sides in different transactions. So we see what the sensitivities are for the entrepreneurs who are looking to cash out or to stay in, and also from the investor's point of view, what they need. And usually it's like a 5-year horizon to get out. And so you try to make sure that your clients can perform their business plans. And I think one of the, what I'll leave you with is 2 rules I always tell my entrepreneurial clients. One is start small, finish big. Okay. A lot of people, as was mentioned earlier, go out, raise a lot of money, they start big and they finish small. So you don't want to be one of those. The other one I always tell entrepreneurs is your first deal is your best deal. You're never going to get a better deal than the first deal you get. In the sense of being able to have the upside, whatever, you have to ask for it early. If you don't ask for it right away, you're never going to get it. I see a lot of heads shaking, so I think you all agree. What I'm going to do now is just ask you if you have any questions. I'd be happy to address them if we have a dialogue, perhaps. Yes, hi.
How many startups last for
So the question is how many startups last for more than 3 years, and what are the reasons for, I guess, failure?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I would like to look positively, but what are the reasons for success? But we'll deal with your question. It's hard to say. From personal experience, I would say about 20% last more than 3 years, from what we've seen. From both sides, as representing startups and as representing the investments. Reasons for failure, the wrong people doing the wrong thing. You have transactional people trying to run the company or vice versa, and sometimes the whole idea just doesn't work. Somebody else comes by, Google does it better, faster. They buy somebody and they put a lot of money into them, and then you're out of business. You need something very disruptive in terms of technology to succeed. And a lot of people jump on the bandwagon. They'll see something going on in the marketplace, and they'll create a company just like it, and they could do the same thing. So. And then the other reason is, in terms of software, the code just doesn't work. I've had clients call me and say, "You're not going to believe this, but this just doesn't work. It's spaghetti code." I had another client back about 10 years ago when fiber optics was really getting a lot of funding, and you could close a fiber optic startup transaction investment in 40 days, 30 days. One of the clients was doing an all optical switch. So in other words, the input would be optical, and the switch would be optical, and the output would be optical. Up until that point, really, you had optical being converted into electrical switch and coming out optical. And that's about as much as I know about the technology. But what happened was that the switch, which was being done with liquid crystals, just didn't work for data. It worked for voice. It didn't work for data. It was blocking within the signal. So the timing of that was terrible because fiber optics was losing its, well, there's a glut of it basically at the time, and the funders just pulled their funding. A lot of reasons.
Thank you.
Hi.
So
I believe you mentioned earlier that the concept of merchant acquisitions that, in the concept of M&A that sometimes companies either favor or don't favor using investment bankers for valuation. I believe that was you, maybe someone else, but is it?
Somebody else.
Okay, sorry. Well, and since you mentioned about group companies, do you know what alternatives would there be to IB, valuing company, when you're trying to represent them?
You know what, there's been so many different ways of doing it. Some people are just happy to get out and they'll basically take whatever's offered. They'll try to feign toughness, but then they'll cave in and accept whatever they're given. And other people will really stick to their guns and say, look, you know, this is my exit, or my investors require this exit. A lot of companies don't have enough historical financial activity in the plus column to be able to value the mature business with these, so it's really based on future potential. Value also in terms of the digital space or the e-commerce spaces, you know, people who are clicking in. And there's probably better people in this room to answer that question. I'm looking at them right now.
You know, it's like, again, the valuation, you know, is really up to you as a company, and also to willing buyer, willing seller. And I think it's important. You said know when to get out. We were very fortunate, and when I say we used the banker, we just had another mind share of advice where we had professionals that came and said, realistically, even our M&A attorneys were also saying, okay, it seems like a company range. And you don't really know, you know, what your value is until the person on the other side saying you're willing to pay for it. Some people think they do know, but I think it's very important to just kind of measure where you're at. We had a price point that we wanted to get to yourselves. We always had this trigger, and it's tied to our equity ownership. And that was our value. We had another bidder come in to try to outbid Google, and we was like, it's all right, we made it. You know, so again, it's up to you as an individual. The downside, I think you said, is to get out small. And that's a hard thing. For me, is not to get out big, but realistically.
Thank you. And just to also mention, I have a client right now, one owner of a company's 12 years old. He created a highly disruptive commerce model. It wasn't even technology. It was just the relationships and the way he managed these relationships. I can't tell you who it is, but you probably use his company not knowing it at least once a quarter, maybe once a month, depending on how active you are. He has, in his mind, 120 million. He's going to get out of his business for 120 million, and nothing short of that. Been offered in the last month 85, 88, and 94. And the bankers are saying, take the deal. And he's saying, no, 120. So maybe the next time we get together, I'll let you know how that works out. I'm not sure how it's going to work out.
Okay, we have to go on to the
Thank
next
you.
speaker.
Mario, thank you very much for that key takeaways for me, and building upon some of the other speakers, the power of teams, and the need for understanding the different skills within the business, the transactors versus the operators. I think you didn't use the language, but picking up on the earlier theme about knowing what problem you're trying to solve, the painkiller, and solving real world problems. So I think those were some excellent takeaways. Now, I'd like to invite Joseph Perry from Junior Achievement. He is the president of the New York chapter.
Thank you, Bob, and good morning, everybody. I'm really thrilled to be here this morning. Like Mario, I'm a graduate of Fordham, I think a couple of years behind him. It was, I guess, GSB now. We called it CBA back then, class of 79. And sort of interesting, sort of a quick sidebar on that. When I came to Fordham in the mid-'70s, there was a lot of talk about how long it took the university to get the College of Business named a College of Business, because in the past it had been called a School of Business. And
the time they felt that, it was more prestigious to be called a college of business. So I guess the moral of that story is if you wait long enough, different things just sort of come back in vogue. So now it's the Valley School of Business. It's a lot nicer now, I will tell you that. But it was great then, but it's a lot nicer now, and I guess progress is a good thing. I'm a native New Yorker as well. I grew up in Queens, and so just over the bridge, if you will, from here. And I've lived and worked all of my career in and around the New York area. I am a CPA by profession, and I spent about 5 years in public and private accounting, but really I spent most of my career in the nonprofit, in the management of nonprofit organizations, and in the last close to 20 years or so, that's been in the education space, particularly the K-12 education space, and focused on the areas of economic, business, and financial literacy. It's interesting. Since its founding, I think New York City has always been considered an entrepreneurial town or city. But in the last decade or so, of course, we've witnessed this tremendous growth to position New York City as a global hub for startups and startup technology businesses. To the point that today the city, I think, is pretty much passed by most measures the Boston 128 corridor area, and really second only behind Silicon Valley in that categorization. And this is really, terrific in so many ways for the city, because it really gives us an opportunity to transform and greatly diversify the city's economy. And, what we learned from the financial crisis in 2008 is that our financial services sector, while it will always be, I think, a great, strong part of New York City's economy, it may not necessarily, be the engine that drives the city as it has in the past. So I think that the high-tech sector and the startup sector and the rich ecosystem that's grown up around that can really, I think, supplement and take its turn as a leadership industry in New York. I think the question really is, how do we ensure that the benefits of this transformation extend outside of Silicon Alley, right, and to places like the city's northernmost and unfortunately poorest borough, the Bronx. And how do we help the Bronx's young people really prepare to participate in the prosperity that this new economy can bring to us? So I'd like to really, try to answer some of these questions by offering a few remarks about a particular aspect of this issue, really the earliest part of the ecosystem, if you will, and that's on the educational and inspirational opportunities for young people. So at Junior Achievement, we really believe a good part of the answer, in fact, does reside in our efforts to prepare, educate, and inspire. And the third part is really, I think, an important part of that. Young people to be successful and prepared to succeed in the 21st century global economy. Just as a little background, for those of you who are not familiar, Junior Achievement of New York is the local affiliate of the nation's largest nonprofit organization that's dedicated to giving young people the knowledge and skills they need to own their own economic success and plan for their future, and make smart academic and economic and life choices. As a major bridge between business and education, our 120 affiliates around the country deliver financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and college and career readiness education to more than 4 million K-12 students each year through the work of some 200,000 volunteers, mainly from the business world, but also from local communities as well around the country. Let's go here. So here in New York City, as I said, Junior Achievement of New York, our footprint is the 5 boroughs of the city plus Long Island. And we reach about 67,000 or so young people each year through partnerships with over 200 schools throughout the footprint. And we work here with about 5,000 volunteers from the business sector and from the community. Last year in the Bronx alone, okay, so last year in the Bronx alone, over 8,300 students in K-12 schools here participated in junior achievement programs, 350 classes, 26 schools here in the Bronx, and over 600 volunteers from the business world and from the local community participated in this. I just want to give you just a sense of flavor of the schools we work with here in the Bronx. So we call these our gold school partners and silver school partners. It really speaks to the level of involvement that the schools have in terms of partnering with our organization. But there's some great schools involved with us here in the Bronx. And one interesting story, one of our strongest school partnerships is with the Middle School 223, which is a school also called the Laboratory School of Finance and Technology. They have a really dynamic principal, Ramon Gonzalez, who was a former JA student himself, who grew up on public assistance in East Harlem, attended public schools there, went on to win a full scholarship to Cornell, and when he basically came out of college, he decided that he was going to go into the education field and really try to work and help the kids in the Bronx. His school is located in the South Bronx. Really try to take advantage of education as a pathway that allowed him to rise out of poverty because he really believed, as we do, that it all starts with education and opportunities for young people. So one of the concepts that we teach at Junior Achievement for young people is that how entrepreneurship itself can be a viable pathway to economic self-sufficiency. And teaching kids about the fundamentals of business, helping them to develop an entrepreneurial mindset, really helps arm young people with skills that are necessary to succeed in school, potentially start businesses, and also create jobs in the process. One program in particular that we've had a lot of success in this area with is the citywide business plan competition that we run each year, which since its inception 6 years ago has had more than 5,000 participants around the city, high school students who participated in the program. And it's really a program that is designed to foster high school kids' interest in entrepreneurship, especially as a pathway to economic and social empowerment. And it's really exciting to see each year. And these are kids who are, can be as young as sophomores in high school, who really know, in a sense, nothing about business, never studied business in school, but to really see them come up with some very sophisticated and innovative ideas, put a sort of a 6-week crash course that we put them through to learn basic business skills and acumen, and really the most exciting part is to see the passion that they bring to this enterprise. And so, when you give young people the opportunity, and when you put successful people in front of them, and really, people that show that they care about helping young people, tremendous things can happen in a very short period of time. But they learn a lot about, how things work in the business world, and how to develop skills such as, and we've heard a lot about this morning, putting together teams that work, teams that are successful at working together, and also about creating the basics of a business plan, which they can then put forward for a future venture. But I think beyond the technical skills that they learn, these are experiences that really have great potential to impact the future vitality and the economic stability of the New York business community in general, and really contribute to what we need here to move forward places like the Bronx, which is a well-educated workforce. It's been said by many that entrepreneurs are the heartbeat of the American economy, and there's lot of strong evidence to back that up. For example, the U.S. Small Business Administration says that over the last 2 decades, small and new businesses have created 2 out of every 3 net new jobs in the United States. And I think an important component of this is that that study indicates that 80% of aspiring entrepreneurs in the United States are between 18 and 34. So we have a great opportunity, I think, in reaching kids before they even get to college with not only improving their education, but pointing them to business and entrepreneurship as a potential pathway to success in their future. And I think a valid question that has been asked for a long time, and probably still is asked, is, can entrepreneurship be taught? And I think there are educators and economists that continue to debate this. But I think we, at Junior Achievement, certainly we believe that the answer is at least a qualified yes. There's an interesting post last year in the Huffington Post by Kevin Gadd, who's the founder of an organization called Venture Highway. He makes a very strong case for investing in a consistent and long-term entrepreneurship educational program for young people. But he notes a word of caution. He says, I'll quote, that it will take a slow cooker as opposed to a microwave mentality to both fix our economy and create new companies. And just as we cannot expect that a student will take 1 or 2 classes in business or entrepreneurship and be ready to grow a new business, it doesn't happen that way in the real world, and it's not going to happen that way necessarily for students, no matter how great their instructors are. But I think at the same time, we believe that entrepreneurs are not people that are successful as a predestined by nature, if you will, to be successful entrepreneurs. There are things that you can teach, and there are pathways that you can put young people on to really open their minds and their eyes to the possibilities of what you can be as an entrepreneur. So we really do believe that the right knowledge, exposure, and inspiration can help entrepreneurs, in a sense, be made over time. Because what distinguishes an entrepreneur really is a passion to conceive ideas and start something, and a desire to learn more, and a determination and a capacity to learn from failure. And we've heard a number of our speakers this morning really point to those qualities that really have been sort of the make or break thing between success and failure. And there's no doubt that students here in the Bronx have potentially as many great ideas as young people from any other areas. But what a lot of them lack is an accessible entry point to the world of entrepreneurship and business in general, and exposure to the range of possibilities conceivable, for example, in a technology innovation and a startup business environment. The other thing, too, is that it's not necessarily realistic to expect that everyone who gets exposed to entrepreneurship in an educational environment will actually necessarily even be an entrepreneur. But it's important, really, in the new economy today, the ability to think entrepreneurially is an important aspect or quality for everyone to have in the workplace. I think the days of being sort of even if in the largest corporations, of being a cog in a wheel that just sort of exists through and sort of every year goes through some sort of a marginal promotion or whatever. Those days are long over. And if you're not being innovative and creative and thinking entrepreneurially in your own part of even a big company, you're not going to be very successful for very long. So I think all this brings me back to today's main topic, and that is, what really does entrepreneurship education have to do with technological innovation, business development, and investment in the Bronx? I think